4:11 a.m., Strait of Hormuz, 19 nautical miles northeast of Musandam Peninsula. 5 Iranian fast attack craft just broke from a coastal holding pattern and moved directly toward a U.S. Navy destroyer at 44 knots. The USS Cole had 6 minutes before the range closed to weapons engagement distance. American helicopters were already spinning up on the flight deck. Welcome to Navy Strikeforce. Today we're going inside the 118 minutes that followed that contact report. 118 minutes in which a coordinated Iranian fastboat approach, a helicopter rapid response deployment, and a decision made under fire by a destroyer commanding officer brought the Strait of Hormuz to the edge of a live engagement. This is what an Iranian fastboat intercept actually looks like from the bridge of an American warship, and why the helicopter response it triggered was not improvised. It was the product of a doctrine built from hard experience in exactly this kind of confrontation. To understand what made this approach different from the dozens of IRGC and harassment incidents that preceded it, you need to understand the geometry of the strait at night. The Strait of Hormuz at 4:11 a.m. is not dark in the conventional sense. It is cluttered. Commercial tanker traffic moves through the transit lanes continuously. Vessels ranging from 50,000-ton product carriers to 300,000-ton VLCCs, all generating radar returns, all producing AIS transponder signals, all creating a surface picture dense enough to conceal a small fast attack craft until it is already dangerously close. The IRGCN understands this. Their standard approach doctrine for night intercepts is to position fast attack craft behind or alongside commercial traffic, using the larger vessel's radar signatures as concealment until the moment they break away and accelerate toward their target. That is exactly what happened at 4:11 a.m. The 5 IRGCN Boghammer-class vessels had been positioned alongside a 280,000-ton VLCC transiting northbound through the strait for approximately 34 minutes prior to the approach. On the Cole's surface search radar, the 5 small contacts had been indistinguishable from the clutter of smaller support vessels and tugs that often accompany or trail large tanker traffic in the strait. The watch officer had noted the contacts, but classified them as commercial support traffic. That classification held for 34 minutes. At 4:11 a.m., all 5 vessels simultaneously broke from the tanker's shadow, altered course 40 degrees west, and accelerated to 44 knots on a direct intercept bearing toward the Cole. Simultaneously, same moment, same course change, same acceleration. The simultaneity is the signature of a coordinated military operation. Commercial vessels do not make simultaneous course changes. Fishing boats do not execute coordinated acceleration maneuvers. What the Cole's watch officer was looking at was not a collection of independent contacts making independent decisions. It was a unit receiving and executing a single command. The watch officer had the contact report to the commanding officer in 70 seconds. By the time the commanding officer reached the bridge, the 5 vessels were 4.2 nautical miles out and closing at 44 knots. At that closure rate, the range would drop to within 500 meters. The effective engagement distance of the rocket-propelled grenade systems and heavy machine guns the Boghammers were known to carry. In approximately 5 minutes and 40 seconds, 5 minutes and 40 seconds, the commanding officer made 2 calls simultaneously. First, launch the helicopters. Second, man all close-in weapons stations. The Cole carried 2 MH-60S Seahawk helicopters in its air detachment. The MH-60S in naval surface warfare configuration is equipped with a .50 caliber M, 2 machine gun door mount, and provides something a surface combatant cannot generate on its own in a close-range fast boat threat environment: an elevated platform with a complete 360-degree visual picture of the engagement area, capable of communicating threat positions to the ship in real time and capable of positioning itself between the approaching vessels and the ship itself. The first Seahawk, callsign Warhawk 1, was airborne at 4:14 a.m. 3 minutes from the initial contact report to wheels up. That timeline reflects a crew that had been maintaining heightened readiness posture for exactly this contingency, with pre-mission checks already completed. The second Seahawk, Warhawk 2, was airborne at 4:16 a.m. By the time Warhawk 1 reached the intercept area, the 5 IRGCN vessels were 2.1 nautical miles from the Cole and still closing at full speed. The helicopter's arrival changed the tactical geometry immediately. An IRGCN fast attack craft approaching a destroyer at surface level is operating in an environment where the destroyer's defensive weapons have real limitations. The Phalanx CIWS, the 20mm radar-guided close-in weapon system, is optimized for incoming missiles and can engage surface targets, but its radar has difficulty maintaining track on multiple fast-moving small surface contacts simultaneously in cluttered sea conditions. The Mark 38 25mm chain gun is effective, but requires line-of-sight acquisition and has a relatively slow traverse rate against rapidly maneuvering small craft. At close range, in darkness, with 5 vessels approaching from slightly different angles, the surface engagement problem becomes genuinely complex. A helicopter overhead changes that equation entirely. From 200 feet above the water, the MH-60S crew has a clear thermal imaging picture of all 5 approaching vessels simultaneously. They can communicate exact positions, speeds, and headings to the ship in real time. And they can position the helicopter itself, a military aircraft with a visible door-mounted weapon, directly in the path of the approaching boats in a way that communicates a capability and a willingness to engage that is immediately and unmistakably visible to the IRGCN crews below. Warhawk 1 descended to 150 feet and positioned itself 400 meters ahead of the lead approaching vessel at 4:17 a.m. The lead Boghammer held course for 22 seconds. Then it began to slow. The Cole's commanding officer was watching the radar picture from the bridge. The lead vessel's speed was dropping from 44 knots to 38 to 31 to 22. The second and third vessels, positioned on the flanks of the lead boat's approach axis, maintained speed for another 40 seconds before they, too, began to reduce. But the fourth and fifth vessels, the outermost elements of the approaching formation, did not slow down immediately. They continued on their approach, bearing for 90 additional seconds after the lead vessels had begun to reduce speed. This is the tactical detail that made the incident more dangerous than it appeared in the summary report. The fourth and fifth vessels were not following the lead in breaking off. They were executing a flanking continuation. While the lead boats drew the helicopter's attention and appeared to be breaking off, the outer boats were continuing their approach on a wider axis, one that would bring them to within 600 meters of the Cole's stern quarter, while the helicopter was focused on the lead element. The Warhawk 1 crew caught it. At 4:19 a.m., the pilot transmitted a contact update to the Cole. 2 vessels still closing, bearing 340, range 1.4 nautical miles, speed 40 knots, approaching the stern quarter. The commanding officer of the Cole had 90 seconds before those 2 vessels reached 600 meters. This is where the decision became genuinely complex. The outer 2 vessels had not demonstrated a clear hostile act under the rules of engagement in effect at the time. They were approaching at high speed in international waters, aggressive, threatening, clearly coordinated with the other vessels that had just slowed in front of the ship. But they had not fired. They had not deployed weapons. They had not made a hostile communication. Rules of engagement in the Gulf require demonstrated hostile intent or hostile act before lethal force is authorized. Approaching fast is not, in the strict legal reading, a hostile act. It is a precursor. It is the condition immediately preceding a hostile act. But it is not the act itself. The commanding officer had 3 options in the 90 seconds available to him. Option A: fire warning shots across the bow of the 2 approaching vessels using the Mark 38 chain gun. Demonstrate lethal capability without lethal engagement. Accept the legal and political exposure of having fired first in what Iran would immediately characterize as unprovoked aggression. Option B: direct Warhawk 2, still holding over the ship, to reposition to intercept the stern quarter approach and use the helicopter's presence to force the vessels to slow, mirroring what Warhawk 1 had done with the lead element. Option C, execute an emergency course change. Put the Cole into a hard turn that would bring the ship's bow toward the two approaching vessels, increasing the range to the stern and placing the ship's heaviest defensive weapons on the threat bearing. What would you order? Comment A, B, or C below, because the commanding officer was already moving. He directed Warhawk 2 to the stern quarter intercept, simultaneously with initiating a 20-degree course change that began bringing the Cole's bow around toward the threat bearing. Not a full emergency maneuver, a controlled, deliberate turn that changed the geometry without creating the visual appearance of a panicked response. Warhawk 2 reached the intercept position at 4:20 a.m., descending to 100 feet and positioning directly in the path of the fourth approaching vessel. The fourth vessel broke off at 4:20 a.m. The fifth vessel, the outermost element, held its approach bearing for an additional 28 seconds before altering course north. At 4:21 a.m., all 5 IRGCN vessels were opening on the Cole. The approach had been broken. No weapons had been fired. No personnel had been injured on either side. The entire kinetic phase of the incident, from the moment the 5 vessels broke from the tanker's shadow to the moment the last one turned away, had lasted 10 minutes and 14 seconds. Both Seahawks maintained visual contact with the retreating vessels for 22 additional minutes, transmitting position updates to the Cole until the IRGCN craft had returned to within 3 nautical miles of the Iranian coastline. The Cole resumed its transit at 4:34 a.m., 23 minutes behind schedule. The post-incident assessment was detailed and generated conclusions that circulated through multiple commands in the following weeks. The use of commercial tanker traffic as concealment was not new. IRGCN vessels had used commercial radar clutter to mask positioning on prior occasions. What was new was the duration of the concealment hold and the precision of the timing. The 5 boats had broken from the tanker's shadow at a moment when the Cole was committed to a specific approach angle through the strait's navigable channel with limited ability to maneuver significantly without entering the opposing traffic lane or the shallow water to the south. The moment of approach had been chosen to maximize the Cole's geometric constraint. Furthermore, the flanking continuation executed by the 4th and 5th vessels was assessed as deliberate tactic rather than a failure of the outer boats to receive a recall order. The timing was too precise. The continuation lasted exactly long enough to determine whether the helicopter would reposition or hold. When Warhawk 2 repositioned, the 5th vessel broke off within 28 seconds, a response time suggesting the outer vessel's commander was watching the helicopter and waiting for it to commit before deciding whether to continue his own approach. Iran was testing helicopter response doctrine in real time. The operational changes that followed modified helicopter prepositioning protocols across 5th Fleet, requiring at least one MH-60S at full launch readiness during all Strait transits. The change increased crew fatigue, demands on air detachments throughout the Gulf region. It was accepted as necessary, but the behavioral profile Iran had collected during those 10 minutes and 14 seconds already existed. Helicopter launch timeline: 3 minutes. Hover positioning distance: 400 meters ahead of lead vessel. Reposition trigger: confirmed flanking contact at under 1.5 nautical miles. Time from reposition order to 4th vessel breaking off: under 60 seconds. Every one of those data points was in Iranian files before the Cole's crew finished their debrief. The 5 IRGCN vessels were back in their coastal facility by 5:30 a.m. They had achieved nothing kinetically. They had not damaged the Cole. They had not stopped its transit, but they had done exactly what they came to do. Stay sharp, stay informed. This is Navy Strikeforce. We'll see you in the next one.